The Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes of the Flathead Reservation of the Bitterroot Salish, Kootenai and Pend tribes. They were incorrectly called the Flathead Indians by the first Europeans who came to the area. The Flatheads called themselves Salish, meaning the people. These people never practiced head flattening, but the Columbia River neighbors shaped their own heads to create a pointed appearance, and called the Salish Flatheads. In contrast, the Flatheads lived between the Cascade Mountains and Rocky Mountains. The Salish initially lived entirely east of the Continental Divide but established the headquarters near the eastern slope of the Rocky Mountains. Occasionally, hunting parties went west of the Continental Divide but not west of the Bitterroot Range. The easternmost edge of their ancestral hunting forays were the Gallatin, Crazy Mountain, and Little Belt Ranges. History. The first written record of the tribes is from the meeting with the Lewis and Clark expedition. Lewis and Clark came there and asked for horses but eventually ate the horses due to starvation. The Flatheads also appear in the records of the Roman Catholic Church at St. Louis, Missouri, to which they sent 4 delegations to request missionaries to minister to the tribe. The request was finally granted, and a number of missionaries, including Pierre-Jean de Smet, S.J., were eventually sent. The Flatheads are also located in Sula, Montana. The tribes negotiated the Hellgate Treaty with the United States in 1855. For the start, treaty negotiations were plagued by serious translation problems. A Jesuit observer, Father Adrian Hocken, said that the translations were so poor that not a tenth of what was said was understood by either side. But as in the meeting with Lewis and Clark, the pervasive cross-cultural miscommunication ran even deeper than problems of language and translation. Tribal people came to the meeting assuming they were going to formalize an already recognized friendship. Non-Indians came with the goal of making official their claims to native lands and resources. Isaac Stevens, the new governor and superintendent of Indian Affairs for the Washington Territory, was intent on obtaining cession of the Bitterroot Valley from the Salish. Many non-Indians were already well aware of the valley's potential value for agriculture and its relatively temperate climate in winter. Because of the resistance of Chief Victor, Stevens ended up inserting into the treaty complicated language that defined the Bitterroot Valley south of Lolo Creek as a conditional reservation for the Salish. Victor put his X mark on the document, convinced that the agreement would not require his people to leave the homeland. No other word came from the government for the next 15 years, so the Salish assumed that they would indeed stay in the Bitterroot Valley forever. After the 1864 gold rush in the newly established Montana Territory, pressure upon the Salish intensified from both illegal non-Indian squatters and government officials. In 1870, Victor died, and he was succeeded as chief by his son, Chief Charlotte. Like his father, Charlotte adhered to a policy of non-violent resistance. He insisted on the right of his people to remain in the Bitterroot Valley, but territorial citizens and officials thought the new chief could be pressured into capitulating. In 1871, they successfully lobbied President Ulysses S. Grant to declare that the survey required by the treaty had been conducted and that it had found that the Jocko Reservation was better suited to the needs of the Salish. On the basis of Grant's executive order, Congress sent a delegation, led by future President James Garfield, to make arrangements with the tribe for the removal. Charlotte ignored their demands and even the threats of bloodshed, and he again refused to sign any agreement to leave. U.S. officials then simply forged Charlotte's X onto the official copy of the agreement that was sent to the Senate for ratification. Over time, the real reason for the Hellgate Treaty meetings became clear to the Salish and Pend people. Under the terms spelled out in the written document, the tribes ceded to the United States more than 20 million acres of land and reserved from cession about 1.3 million acres, thus forming the Joko of Flathead Indian Reservation. Conditions had become intolerable for the Salish by the late 1880s, after the Missoula and Bitterroot Valley Railroad was constructed directly through the tribe's lands, with neither permission from the native owners nor payment to them. Charlotte finally signed an agreement to leave the Bitterroot Valley in November 1889. Inaction by Congress, however, delayed the removal for another 2 years, and according to some observers, the tribe's desperation reached a level of outright starvation. In October 1891, a contingent of troops from Fort Missoula forced Charlotte and the Salish out of the Bitterroot and roughly marched the small band 60 miles to the Flathead Reservation. The three main tribes moved to the Flathead Reservation were the Bitterroot Salish, the Pend, and the Kootenai. The Bitterroot Salish and the Pend tribes spoke dialects of the same Salish language. A dispute over off-reservation hunting between a band of Pend and the state of Montana's Fish and Game Department resulted in the Swan, the Valley Massacre of 1908, though marked for termination in 1953 under the House Concurrent Resolution 108 of the U.S. Federal Indian Termination Policy. The Flathead tribes were able to resist the government's plans to terminate the tribal relationship in congressional hearings in 1954. Demographics. The tribe has about 6,800 members, with approximately 4,000 tribal members living on the Flathead Reservation as of 2013, and 2,800 tribal members living off the reservation. The predominant religion is Roman Catholicism. 1,100 Native Americans from other tribes and more than 10,000 non-Native Americans also live on the reservation. As the first to organize a tribal government under the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934, the tribes are governed by a tribal council. The tribal council has 10 members, and the council elects from within a chairman, vice chairman, secretary and treasurer. The tribal government offers a number of services to tribal members and is the chief employer on the reservation. The tribes operate a tribal college, the Salish Kootenai College, and a heritage museum called the People's Center in Pablo, seat of the tribal government. The tribes own and jointly operate a valuable hydropower dam called Kerr Dam, as well as the Quatiknak Resort and Amp Casino in Polson, Grey Wolf Peak Casino in Avero, Montana, county seat of Lake County and most populous community on the reservation. Geography. Aboriginal lands. The peoples of these tribes originally lived in the areas of Montana, parts of Idaho, British Columbia and Wyoming. The original territory comprised about 22 million acres at the time of the 1855 Hellgate Treaty. Reservation lands. The Flathead Reservation in northwest Montana is over 1.3 million acres in size. The Tribal Council represents 8 districts: Arley District, Dixon District, Elmo District, Hot Springs District, Pablo District, Polson District, Ronan District, St. Ignatius District. During World War II, a 422-foot Liberty ship, the SS Chief Charlotte, was named in his honor and built in Richmond, California, in 1943. Culture. Languages: Salish language, Kootenai language. Historical sites. Archaeology. Notable people: Corwin Claremont, artist and educator. Marvin Camel, boxer, WBC in AMP IBF Cruiserweight champion. Deborah Magpie Erling, author. Darcy McNichol, noted writer, Native American activist and anthropologist. Jorna Quick to C. Smith, artist.